Welcome to another episode of the Tobago House of Assembly's Post-Executive Council Media Briefing. This week, the Chief Secretary and the Secretary of Finance and Enterprise Development addressed the media.
Monday was Budget Day, and I wish to extend congratulations to the new Finance Minister on his maiden budget presentation. I think it's an excellent budget, and I think in this context, the people of Tobago, we have every right to be heartened and happy by the recent news coming from the minister. I also wish to express my gratitude to the Minister of Finance for responding to the citizens of Tobago and to our concerns. In his budget presentation, Minister Mber echoed several concerns that I identified in my budget statement in June of this year. I intimated at the time that several areas should be considered as part of the national agenda, and I'm pleased that they have been highlighted in the recent budget statement. These included the need for economic diversification, strengthening and expansion of the tourism sector, greater prudence in our fiscal management, and the establishment of a more enabling environment for the Tobago House of Assembly to collaborate with central government. And all these have been addressed in the recent statement. I can say with a great degree of confidence that the Ministry of Finance and the new central government are now giving serious consideration to the needs of Tobago. And given the current global environment, with the fall in energy prices and the resultant contraction of the local economy, there's an urgent need for the new administration to employ a more disciplined approach to balancing the books and to chart a more viable course towards a sustainable and diversified economy. I'd like to congratulate the Minister of Finance and his team on crafting such a strategy, particularly given the limited time frame within which they were asked to prepare the maiden presentation as a month-old administration. It is testament both to a sound plan of action prior to the assumption of their duties and the diligent work ethic of the new team, along with the technocrats in the Ministry of Finance and the other various ministries. I also want to applaud the administration for the decision to have the International Monetary Fund review the fiscal and monetary positions of the country before undertaking this budgetary exercise. This signals a commitment to what I would say as transparent and unbiased assessment of the nation's economic affairs. When taken into account the various stakeholder consultations that this administration that they have been able to undertake over the past month, what we sense is a growing optimism that foretells or highlights a more team-oriented partnership and a consultative approach on the part of this government. Let me say again that the Assembly is heartened by the collaborative approach taken by the Minister of Finance and this new administration as it relates to the relationship between the two islands. The fiscal 2016 allocation to the Tobago House of Assembly is $2.772 billion, of which $2.345 billion has been assigned to recurrent expenditure, $404 million to capital expenditure, and $23 million to the unemployment relief program. This is equivalent to 4.4% of the national budget, 163 million, or 6.2% increase over last year's figure. Taking into account the additional $1.13 billion in direct expenditure through central government programs, this represents an overall increase of $202 million, or 5.5% over the overall allocation to Tobago in fiscal 2015. It is important to note that other than the spike, quote-unquote spike to 4.07% in fiscal 2013's presentation prior to the Tobago House of Assembly's elections, this is the first time in the past 5 years that Tobago has received a point more than the 4.03% minimum required under the DRC, under the Dispute Resolution Commission. We are mindful of the economic context mentioned previously, and I must say that we in the Tobago House of Assembly believe that this is a step in the right direction. In keeping with the Tobago House of Assembly's 2016 fiscal presentation and follow-up discussions, based on the needs of Tobago, the national budget presentation addressed several key areas of focus, beginning with tourism and transportation. The government has committed to the construction of a new airport terminal, the acquisition of new fast ferries, and enhanced operations of the air and sea bridge, thus alleviating the demand gap. I would say that this positively impacts not only on the international and domestic passengers, but also on the transport of goods and the delivery of services here on the island. We are also pleased that the Minister also acknowledged the need for the Tobago House of Assembly to pursue alternative funding mechanisms, such as the public-private partnerships, both to expand the stock of high-quality hotel rooms, and as well as to accelerate the housing program here on the island. I know that this pledge to provide adequate funding for housing would have resonated not only with my esteemed colleague and myself, but also with the 7,500 housing applicants that we have currently under review. Added to that is the support outlined by the Minister in terms of the regularization of land titles, which will be a boon to many current and prospective homeowners. The citizens of Tobago should also be encouraged by the plans outlined in the budget for integrated water security to address the current challenges with the reliability of water supply. It's a plan to which we will pay special attention to, along with the proposed solid waste management program. This is to ensure that our voice is represented in the decision-making process. Also highlighted by the Minister is the attention and support for human capital development. And we are happy that the Minister intimated about the improvement of the educational infrastructure at all levels on the island. The decision to address not only the physical infrastructure needs, but also curriculum enhancement, focused on fully integrating 21st century academics with cultural appreciation, participation in sporting activities, and a spirit of volunteerism to encourage more holistic and critical thinkers is an absolute necessity and a core component of our comprehensive economic development plan. We are also pleased with these assurances given to address the underlying security concerns that can compromise the Tobago brand of clean, green, safe, and serene. The budget presentation also highlighted plans to strengthen the security apparatus with new police stations at Old Grange, the long-awaited police stations at Old Grange and Roxborough, and new fire stations at Roxborough and Corlan. As part of the unitary state of Trinidad and Tobago, we not only look forward towards the prudent management of the resources allocated to us, but also a greater involvement of the Tobago House of Assembly the generation of the national budget numbers going forward. As we continue to pursue internal self-governance, we stand committed to continue our work with the new administration in building a partnership between the two islands for the equity and prosperity of all. I must say that our previous discussions with the Minister of Planning, both the Minister of Planning and the Minister of Finance, prior to the budget, those meetings have been fruitful, and we look forward to ongoing discussions. Given the limited time available to the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Planning, they were unable to treat with the request by the Tobago House of Assembly in terms of giving us the allocation instead of line items, especially on the development program side, giving us the allocation as per blocks or mini blocks according to the line item heads. But we have received a commitment from the ministers that in the 2017 budget presentation, we will see a revision of the budget estimates to the Tobago House of Assembly. Lastly, I want to focus to treat with two issues in terms of economic diversification under the budget. I highlighted in my budget statement as well the need for a national economic diversification effort. We saw that in the budget, as well as the continued support given to the Cove Eco-Industrial and Business Park, and as well as the construction of a new cargo port that would give the industrial park the competitive advantage that it needs. And this is critical to support the industrial activities at the park and other locations across the island. I'd like to turn my attention to two important announcements as it relates to economic diversification, our flagship programs under the Business Development Unit, and the Venture Capital Equity Fund. In keeping with the agenda of the Division of Finance and Enterprise Development to lend support to local businesses for further expansion and to provide opportunities for private sector growth through assembly-driven mechanisms such as the Enterprise Assistance Fund and the Enterprise Assistance Grant Programs, as well as the Venture Capital Equity Fund, the Assembly has been creating opportunities for the small and micro enterprise sector and even well-established business enterprises. You may recall that in July of this year, I announced that the Executive Council approved the disbursement of funds to two business enterprises totaling $2 million. I'm also pleased to announce that in September last month, the Executive Council approved funding for another business enterprise to access funding under the Venture Capital Fund. The Assembly, through the Venture Capital Equity Fund, will provide just under $2 million. It's actually $1.92 million to the Pork International Group Limited. This funding will support business expansion and the establishment of a processing plant for the production and packaging of meat products in Tobago. This project will provide additional local refined products, including bacon, ham, and sausage, create at least 30 jobs for Tobagonians, reduce the island's import bill by supplying local pork and pork products, provide organic options for consumption, and accomplish one of the major goals of the Assembly, and this is to stimulate the agriculture sector and agro-processing. The agro-processing sector is being further stimulated by support provided by the Business Development Unit. And I'm also pleased to announce this afternoon that following several trade missions to the Caribbean and North American destinations. 2 businesses funded by the Enterprise Assistance Fund have commenced export to New York and Miami. Springtime Food Products and Smart Foods Caribbean Limited will now have condiments and other pre-packaged food items available at these destinations. Our prospects are indeed growing, and I must say that we are penetrating the export market. The Division of Finance is also following up on several other leads where distributors have expressed interest at these overseas missions in accessing locally produced items and having them shipped to other markets. I will advise on the outcome of these initiatives and other agreements in upcoming months. This afternoon, I'm also pleased to announce that the Division of Finance's annual Finance Week will be hosted during the period of November 9th to the 14th. Our signature events during that period include our church service on Monday 9th, our annual Tobago Economic and Business Outlook Conference on November 10th, our annual Business Awards ceremony on Thursday, November 12th, and our Youth Business Forum on Friday, November 13th. We have several other activities planned around Finance Week that will take place preceding the week and following the week, and this will include trips for primary and secondary school students to Trinidad and other corporate social responsibility activities that we have planned for the week.
What came out of this particular budget is as a result of collaboration between the Tobago House of Assembly and the central government, especially the ministries of finance and planning, and of course the sensitivity of these ministries to the wishes and the needs and the circumstances in Tobago, so that it was not only about the resources that were made available to Tobago in the fact that we would have received, based on when you look at the economic situation, I think that we did receive a fair share of the national cake. But it's also about the partnership that is now developing between the Tobago House of Assembly and the central government. Something that was missing over the past 5 years, and something that I think did not bode well for Tobago's development. And when one looks at what is happening and what the signals that are being sent from this particular budget, we recognize that all the sectors in Tobago are likely to benefit once the proposals are operationalized. In the field of tourism, as the Secretary mentioned, it's not only about the airport and the terminal building at the airport, but it's also about the commitment to look very seriously about the whole issue of air and sea transportation and the impact that that is likely to have, especially on domestic tourism, which we still believe has the potential maybe to be the most significant element in the tourism sector in Tobago. And then one looks at the incentives that were given to the fishing and the farming industries with the tax concessions on all kinds of equipment, fishing boats. You're talking about also various types of elements that would be utilized, fertilizer, and pesticides, etc. One recognizes that we do have an opportunity to accelerate the development in these particular sectors. And then the situation at Cove, where we now are going to have the kind of incentives that will make Cove much more attractive. And all of Tobago, I think, would benefit from these initiatives. But I think just as importantly to us is what we saw when we looked at the details of the budget and also what has happened since the budget. I want to just put on record that we now have the capacity to start work on the Scarborough RSC School. The allocation this year is $15 million, which is enough for us to start the tendering and the procurement processes and hopefully break ground before the end of this fiscal year. And that, of course, is something that does bring a lot of relief to us. Another aspect that I consider particularly heartening is the question of board appointments. A lot of people tend to underrate the importance of having THA representation on boards, but we consider this to be critical. There are a number of boards, and we've said this consistently for the past 5 years, whose decisions impact significantly on Tobago. And it means that if the Tobago input is not made available to the decision makers on those boards, a lot of the time the decisions that they make are either not relevant to Tobago or are not effective in treating with the issues that are of importance to Tobago. And I think those of you who have been listening to the board appointments will recognize that on every single board on which we have made recommendations, those recommendations have been accepted by the board's committee and by extension the Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago. So no longer can we complain about not having representation on boards like WASA and the Airport Authority and the Port Authority and the National Carnival Commission and all of those boards on which we think our representation is critical. We expect that process will continue, and not only will there be Tobago representation, but THA representation, and the THA will have an opportunity to make the relevant recommendations and to have the kind of impact that we think is necessary. In addition to the boards, I think the relationship between the Tobago House of Assembly and the central government is going to improve. I want to make it very clear that the Assembly in no way intends to give up its rights, its responsibilities, its autonomy. But we recognize that there are areas in which we can deliver more effectively, in which Tobagonians can benefit to a greater degree if there is a greater collaboration between the Tobago House of Assembly and the central government. So within the next many weeks, we expect that there will be communication between the secretaries and the relevant ministers where issues that are considered to be of common interest. Of course, we will deal with our affairs and take responsibility for our affairs. But there are some areas of overlap, some areas where a coordinated approach would be more effective, and therefore the secretaries have been given the responsibility to list those areas and then arrange meetings with the relevant secretaries. And we expect that this situation would bring some benefits to us in Tobago. I am hoping to meet with the Prime Minister very shortly. I've already written to him intimating the areas that I would like us to focus the discussions. He, of course, will have his own views as to other areas. And I wanted to make it known that I'm not here discriminating. I did write a similar letter to the then Prime Minister, Kamla Persad-Bissessar, when she took office in 2010. But I hope that this time around I'll be a little bit more fortunate in my relationship with the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, and I expect that I will be more fortunate in getting more frequent and more meaningful meetings between the Chief Secretary and the Prime Minister. So I just want to, as I conclude, send a signal to Tobagonians. Regardless of what has transpired or what transpired on Monday, and regardless of what we received or did not receive, this is going to be a challenging period. And our capacity to, not only to survive, but our capacity to weather the storm and to turn around the economy and to really get back on a growth path is not going to depend primarily on what comes out of the central government or what comes out of the Tobago House of Assembly. It is the responsibility of every Tobagonian to contribute to this turnaround. And therefore, even if there would be times when we are likely to become a little disheartened, I want us to bear in mind that as Tobagonians, as residents of Tobago, we've got to join our brothers and sisters in Trinidad in ensuring that we display the level of resilience and the fortitude and, of course, the self-reliance that would be necessary for us to survive this very difficult period. I have every confidence that we in Tobago have the capacity, that we have the correct attitude, and I believe that we are going to get through this period together, and that we are going to, of course, be able to enjoy a brighter and much more predictable future.
I know you would have requested was something like 2-point-something billion for developmental, if I'm not wrong, right? But do you think that this is enough to cater to those projects and so on that the Assembly has on the books to do in the next fiscal year?
But I think beyond the numbers, what we were looking at, given the current the prevailing economic condition in the country, and what the minister had to work with. What the signal we got was beyond the numbers, is that the Assembly was given the assurance that the alternative financing mechanism to treat with those major projects that we have, the minister gave us the commitment that our public-private partnerships, access to grant funding and bond financing to treat with some of those mega projects such as housing. We were giving the assurance that funding, will be given. So it's beyond the allocation. I think what we were looking for all along in our discussions with the previous minister, and what we're finding happening now with this minister is that commitment for Tobago to access alternative funding mechanisms. So that is what I'm really heartened about. Beyond the numbers, yes, we saw an increase for the first time in the funding to the Tobago House of Assembly, but beyond the numbers. And I was also heartened in my discussions with the Minister of Planning, and we got a commitment as well in terms of additional sources of financing. So yes.
Let me just make a point here. Mm-hmm. And it's related to what I just said, that we in Tobago have got to understand that it cannot be business as usual. I think all of us listened to the Minister of Finance and heard what he indicated about the state of the economy. And therefore, we have got to be mature, and we have got to be sensitive, and we have got to realize that it is not everything that we would like to do this year or even over the next 2 or 3 years can be done. And therefore, what is needed is for us to do a number of things, one of which, of course, is to prioritize, to determine those things that have to be done. And secondly, as the Secretary indicated, to identify the various strategies that can be operationalized into making sure that those things are done. And thirdly, to ensure that we have the kind of meaningful partnership that will guarantee that every opportunity which is available would be made available to us. And I think this is the position that we are in at this point in time. So I don't want anybody to go with the impression that because of the relationship that there are going to be some economic miracles. The reality is that there is a finite pie, and there are limitations to the options that are available to us. And in those circumstances, we have got to be realistic enough to understand that there are some things that cannot be done now, but I'm certain that we are in a position where we can explore every option to ensure that everything that can be done is done.
Thank you for staying with us for the Tobago House of Assembly's Post-Executive Council Media Briefing for the week ending October 10th, 2015.